Loni Anderson wasn't just a pretty face in sitcom history. She was a symbol of elegance, resilience, and laughter in a world that often underestimated women on screen. And now, after 79 incredible years, the world is mourning her loss. But behind the dazzling blonde hair and unforgettable role in WKRP in Cincinnati, there's a story that's rarely told. A life filled with private pain, major Hollywood battles, and a career that broke more barriers than people realize. In her final days, Loni left behind more than just a legacy. She left behind clues, memories, interviews, quiet goodbyes that reveal a woman far more complex than the screen ever showed. This is the real story of Loni Anderson's life, and why her death is hitting fans harder than they expected. Before the blonde bombshell image became her legacy, Loni Anderson was just a girl from St. Paul, Minnesota, ambitious, sharp, and determined to prove she was more than just a pretty face. She was crowned valedictorian in high school, not prom queen, and that distinction set the tone for everything she would become. From the very beginning, she was fighting stereotypes. Loni began her career the hard way, with beauty pageants and guest roles in low-budget TV shows. But it wasn't until 1978, when she stepped into the role of Jennifer Marlowe on WKRP in Cincinnati, that her life changed forever. As the curvaceous, unbothered receptionist in a newsroom full of chaos, Loni shattered expectations. She played the sexy blonde, but with intellect, control, and emotional intelligence that made people stop and reevaluate the roles women played on TV. Suddenly, Loni was everywhere. Magazine covers, interviews, talk shows. But it wasn't just her looks that caught attention. It was the way she carried them. With elegance, with awareness, and with a touch of irony. She knew people were watching, and she used it to her advantage. What many didn't realize at the time was that this was a woman building her brand. At a time when Hollywood rarely let women do that on their own terms, Loni Anderson wasn't just a star. She was a woman rewriting what it meant to be powerful on screen. And she was just getting started. Behind the glamour, behind the award shows, the magazine shoots, and the constant camera flashes, Loni Anderson was carrying a kind of pain that never made it into the headlines. She was typecast almost instantly. Hollywood had decided she was the sexy blonde, and no matter how much range or intelligence she brought to the screen, the roles rarely changed. She once said that the industry treated beauty like a cage, one that looked shiny from the outside, but on the inside, it was lonely and limiting. While WKRP in Cincinnati was a breakthrough, it was also a battleground. Loni fought tooth and nail for equal pay. Her male co-stars were being paid more, even when she was clearly the one driving ratings and headlines. That fight turned into tension with producers, and by the fourth season, she was written out of episodes. Her characters sidelined, her presence dimmed. She didn't quit. She was pushed out slowly and strategically. And then came the media. They portrayed her as difficult, demanding, even diva-like. But what they didn't show was a woman standing up for herself in an industry that punished women for having a voice. She wasn't difficult. She was determined. She wasn't ungrateful. She was undervalued. Through it all, Loni never broke publicly. She smiled. She posed. She kept moving. But in private, those battles chipped away at her faith in the business she once loved. The spotlight had made her famous, but it was also where she learned how brutal fame could be. For years, Loni Anderson and Burt Reynolds were Hollywood's golden couple. On the red carpet, they were picture perfect, smiling, glamorous, and deeply admired. But off camera, their relationship was far from a fairy tale. When they married in 1988, it felt like two icons colliding at the peak of their fame. But what followed was a storm no one expected. At first, the marriage seemed stable, almost too polished. But behind the scenes, there was constant tension. Burt was dealing with personal issues, career frustration, and a volatile temper. Loni, still trying to hold on to her own identity as an actress and mother, was increasingly isolated. Their home wasn't a sanctuary. It was a battlefield. In 1993, the split became public and ugly. The media devoured every detail. Burt accused Loni of being a spendthrift. Loni accused Burt of emotional abuse. They fought over custody of their adopted son, Quentin. It was no longer just a divorce, it was a spectacle. Tabloids plastered their private lives across headlines, reducing two once revered stars to characters in a public soap opera. But even as the public took sides, Loni stayed composed. She didn't trade barbs in interviews. She didn't tear him down in print. She focused on rebuilding her life, her career, her role as a mother. It wasn't easy. That chapter cost her more than just a marriage. It nearly cost her peace. But she walked away with something deeper than closure, the strength of surviving it all without becoming bitter. After the chaos of her public divorce and the fading spotlight of WKRP, most assumed Loni Anderson would slowly disappear from Hollywood's radar. But what they didn't see coming was her quiet reinvention, not on billboards, not in box office blockbusters, but in the spaces where real legacy lives. She didn't chase roles that didn't respect her. Instead, she embraced the power of saying no. Loni returned to acting in made-for-TV movies and guest roles, choosing projects that gave her control. She played teachers, mothers, even complex women battling illness. These roles weren't headline makers, but they were hers. In a town that often punishes women for aging, Loni aged on her own terms. No scandal, no desperation, just grace, poise, and purpose. Away from the cameras, she became an advocate. After losing both parents to COPD, she threw herself into raising awareness about lung disease. She used her fame for something bigger than herself, educating others, hosting fundraisers, visiting patients. It was personal. It was real. It was the kind of work that doesn't trend on social media, but leaves lasting impact. She also became a voice for Alzheimer's caregivers, speaking candidly about watching loved ones fade and how it reshaped her view on time, memory, and love. Her interviews in later years weren't about hair color or wardrobe. They were about legacy, health, and the human spirit. Loni Anderson may have once lit up the screen with glamour and sparkle, but her second act proved she was much more than her image. She became an example of resilience, refusing to let Hollywood write her ending. She rewrote it herself, quietly, purposefully, and with dignity. Loni Anderson passed away on August 2, 2025, just shy of her 80th birthday. She died quietly, surrounded by loved ones after a prolonged illness that she chose not to make public. True to who she had always been, Loni didn't want sympathy tours or dramatic farewells. She wanted dignity. She wanted peace. And that's exactly how she left. Gracefully, without spectacle, without noise. But the silence didn't last long. Within hours, tributes poured in from fans, former co-stars, journalists, and even younger celebrities who had never met her but were touched by her work. Howard Hesseman's family shared a heartfelt message, saying Loni always brought sunshine into every room, even the ones dimmed by struggle. Others from the WKRP cast posted never-before-seen photos and memories, calling her the heart of the show. Fans online shared clips of Jennifer Marlowe walking into the newsroom, commanding attention not with force, but with class. Others posted her advocacy speeches, her interviews about aging, her resilience after heartbreak. For a generation, she was the first woman they saw on TV who was allowed to be smart and beautiful, and didn't have to apologize for either. What struck most people, though, wasn't just what she accomplished. It was how she carried herself. Quiet, determined, unshaken by scandal, untouched by bitterness. Even in her final public appearances, she looked radiant, not because of makeup or lighting, but because she had finally found peace within herself. In a world where fame fades fast, Loni Anderson proved that grace lasts longer. Her death wasn't just the loss of a star. It was the closing of a chapter in television history. But her light isn't gone. It's just been passed down to everyone she quietly inspired. Loni Anderson wasn't just a television icon. She was a symbol of what it means to be unbreakable in a world built to tear you apart. She entered the industry in a time when women were expected to be seen, not heard. But she spoke anyway. She challenged the system, fought for equal pay, and refused to let her beauty become her only value. And in doing so, she gave voice to countless women who had none. She was more than Jennifer Marlowe. She was more than Burt Reynolds' ex-wife. She was more than a Hollywood headline. She was a fighter, a survivor, a mother, a woman who knew the price of fame and paid it, without ever losing herself. Her death marks the end of an era, but it also reminds us of something deeper. Legacies aren't built on awards or red carpet moments. They're built on the quiet strength it takes to endure, the battles fought in silence, the grace you carry when the cameras stop rolling. For those who grew up watching her, laughing with her, and admiring her, this goodbye feels personal. because in so many ways, Loni Anderson didn't just play a character on TV, she played a role in our lives, a reminder that you can be soft and strong, bold and kind, brilliant and beautiful. Rest in peace, Loni. Your light didn't fade. It simply changed form. And through every rerun, every tribute, and every heart you touched, you'll never be forgotten.